the parade is a sex parade. I agree that they display every type of sex under the sun at the parade, not just homosexuality, but every type of sex.
And on creationism, which McVety thinks should be taught in Ontario schools. McVety thinks the world is just 6,000 years old.
Give me a book written 10,000 years ago. Give me a building built 10,000 years ago. You can't find it.
And this whole notion, are Christians really being persecuted, or do they suffer from bigotry, given what the status of churches here in the country? Ian Capstick of MediaStyle, a regular on our power panel, had strong words about that. He joins me now. And Charles McVety is the president of the Canada Christian College. He joins us from Toronto. Gentlemen, first of all, good to be here. James Lunny has sort of kicked off this whole notion of religious freedom, and is there a place for social conservative views in our political discussion? Yesterday on the power panel, Ian, this is what Charles McVety contacted us because he said he wanted to talk to you about it. Here's what you said on the program.
I don't like it. I'm going to fight against it. I'm going to watch him real closely, and I'll even go so far as to say that me and a host of other people will happily put James Lunny on notice that if he sticks up for people that go against my human rights, I'll go up against him as well. We'll make the same style of complaints that the right wing are so famously making against the left wing at this point, because we will not stand for our rights to be rolled back, period. I will not stand for a church to say that I do not have the right to get married. Won't do it. I want their charitable status revoked if they don't allow same-sex marriage, period. I'm after those churches, and I'm after James Lunny.
So James Lunny says he's being bigoted, persecuted for his beliefs. You're saying no. What's your view on that?
Well, I'm saying right now that there are basically 4 ways that you can get a charitable status in Canada, and one of them is the advancement of religion, and I don't think that's right. I don't think that simply pushing forward any religion, whether it be the Christian faith, the Buddhist faith, Muslims, should be at all subsidized by the religious minority. And that's exactly what's happening, is that my taxpayer dollars as a religious minority are going to subsidize monks meditating in temples, priests preaching from pulpits, and in some of those instances, they're actually doing things that are against what most Canadians would consider Canadian values. We've had same-sex marriage, for instance, for 10 years, yet for hundreds of years previous to that, it was actually faith communities that discriminated against my community. So, in my estimation, we should remove that, and they can fall under some of the other categories if they, in fact, do serve a public good, which many, many faith institutions do. I look at my friends at the Shepherds of Good Hope here in Ottawa, for instance, who would capably register as a charity, but not simply if they have only religious intent, which is how the law is written right now.
Charles McVety, what's your response to that?
Well, of course, this is unfortunate. This is the actions of people like our friend Ian, who I believe is now a secular fundamentalist. He believes that only his views are valid in this country. He now wants to turn his rights of same-sex marriage into his powers to force everybody to believe his way. And he wants to go against the vast majority of Canadians. He wants to go against the laws of the land, our charter rights. He wants to change the charter, really. And then he even wants to go against Bill C-38 that brought him the right to get married, and he now wants to use this. But that very bill stated that no one should lose any of their rights that are afforded by the Charter of Rights and Freedoms because of same-sex marriage, because of believing in or supporting in. So, Ian, good to you if you want to go at it, but you are going against the very fabric of this country. We've seen other countries go down this secular fundamentalist rule, and it is folly.
Well, first off, I don't know if you're a regular viewer of the program. I'm not a secular fundamentalist. I'm a militant atheist. It's usually how I prefer to describe myself. But moreover, what I actually believe is that for a very long time, there have been massive amounts of persecution by Canadian religious orders against a variety of different types of Canadians, and they've never truly been brought to account. No, that's not nonsense. Let's look
at nonsense. You can't cite anything.
Of course you can. The entire residential school system is a fantastic example of how a system that was put in place in the 1600s in the United Kingdom and only updated in the 1800s there, which we then took on ourselves to give them these types of exemptions, to give them these churches these tax exemptions without doing any proper public good, which they're not doing.
400 years ago in another country, that's what you're that's what you're citing as a reason? I mean, of course, what you're saying is a fundamentalist view that you don't respect anybody anybody else's view. We should have a free contest of ideas and may the best
I want
ideas
no
win.
religious
Not
organization.
people suppressing and oppressing to
No.
the point where James Lunny has to do what he's done.
Well, I want no religious organization to have to perform a same-sex marriage that doesn't want to do it. But I also don't want anybody that's refusing to perform same-sex marriages from being subsidized by my money as a religious minority, which is exactly what's happening, and that's not fair. And that's in fact what I'm arguing for, is that I would like additional charter protections for the separation of church and state, so that organizations like yours and Trinity Western and a whole host of others aren't allowed to issue tax receipts, because I think it's reprehensible.
You're showing your true colors. You are a fundamentalist who wants to use your rights as powers to then go and to force everybody else to just follow what you believe. But you know what?
Why do we subsidize the Catholic Church that's capitalized to the tune of about $15 billion here in the province of Ontario, Charles? Why do we continue to do that when we don't subsidize Muslim schools or Jewish schools? Why do you continue wanting to subsidize some of the radical Islamic behavior that's going on right now in Montreal, Calgary, and a whole host of other places where our teens are being radicalized with tax receipts being issued?
Well,
I mean, I don't understand that at all. Churches are never investigated the way left-wing organizations are, and that's what I'm asking for. Is for the CRA to investigate churches and make sure that they're actually under the 10% that they're allowed.
Mr. McVety.
In fact, what you're asking the CRA to do is to go against the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, to go against Bill C-38.
Which section of the Charter does it violate?
Against freedom. And
which
you know
section of the Charter does it violate?
Well,
by number.
hang on.
You are
Ian's
not
point,
king. You
Mr.
can't
McVety.
decree.
Okay, but let me just ask, Mr. McVety, Ian's point is, and I just want to try to get your answer on this.
Sure.
He's saying you can say what you want and do what you want, but he's saying should the country, should the state essentially give religious organizations tax receipts to charitable status to do that or not, which is a benefit?
Sure. Well, of course it's a benefit, and this is the greatest country in the world, and part of the reason why it's the greatest country is because of this benefit, where the church and other religious institutions have been able to do such great work and help society and build society.
Go ahead.
You want to argue to the contrary? That's why we have a House of Commons. You can then go get elected, as Dr. Lunny has, and you can go argue this. But
we're having a debate here right now. That's what this. That's actually this is another public forum, and it's a fantastic one, and it's one where it's very clear, according to the law, that, quote, an element of theistic worship, which means the worship of a deity or deities, and I'm not sure if you have the problem with the worship of multiple deities. We can talk about that later. But it is, in the spiritual sense, it is not enough, though, to only foster a proper belief in morals and ethics. So the bottom line is that the intent of the current government policy is in fact to advance theistic intent, which is the worship of a variety of deities, which makes no sense to me. I don't want my taxpayer dollars going to you to worship Jesus Christ. I just don't.
But
it doesn't make sense to me.
Mr. McVety.
The venue for you to use is the House of Commons to go and elect members and change the laws, not to use the CRA as a blunt instrument to go and harass people with
No, I'm advocating for a change in the law. That's what I'm advocating for, and that's actually part of my responsibility as a citizen.
No, but
I don't just want to get elected to my district. Come on.
Typical of a fundamentalist, where you shift the target when you lose the argument, and you've lost this argument, Ian. I'm sorry.
So have you lost the argument on same-sex marriage? That's my question. Have you lost the argument on same-sex marriage? 10 years in, Charles. 10 years in. I've been married to my husband now for 3 years. Has Canadian society fundamentally been damaged? Yes or no?
Well, yeah, absolutely. That's why we're...
So more people are more religious Canadians now, according to Statistics Canada.
Mr. McVety,
how has it been changed?
How has it been changed? It's showing up in our curriculum in a horrific way, and there are millions of parents that are upset about the teaching of 6 genders when little children are 8 years old. It is showing up with the persecution.
So you don't believe the scientific facts behind intersex children or transgenderism?
Oh, come on. This is, unfortunately, the reality of the powers that you were talking about. The gay rights have become gay powers.
Do you believe I choose to be gay?
And now you want to force everybody.
No. I have a real big question. It's the biggest one. Do you believe that I choose to be gay?
That has nothing to do with
this. Yes, it does. It has everything to do with this. It has everything to do with this, Charles. Answer the question.
You choose your actions.
Great. Then why don't you come have sex with me? Seriously, I'm going to challenge you, just like Dan Savage does all the time.
That's how
why don't we come do that?
But hang on,
well, exactly.
But hang on.
Just as ridiculous as your statement is. Just as ridiculous as that statement is.
Hang in there.
Just as ridiculous.
Okay, I got about a minute left here. Mr. McVety, Mr. Lunny was on the program saying he, as a social conservative, believes
Yes.
he's being bullied against. Ian Capstick says
Exactly.
he, as an atheist, believes he's been bullied against by the system because of the charitable status. Do you believe, as a social conservative, you've been bullied? Discriminated against?
Absolutely, and I will fight for Ian's right to speak, as Voltaire said. I may disagree with him, but he should be free to speak.
No, you don't.
And you, Ian, you may disagree with me, but you should fight for the right for me and Dr. Lunny and everybody else to have their free speech.
Yes, without me funding it. Without me funding it. You never funded my same-sex marriage fight. You just didn't. Like, that's the bottom line, is that without it being funded by others. I'm a libertarian. I believe you can believe whatever you want, Charles. But the moment that you decide to teach children that scientific facts aren't real and that I'm not a full human being, that's not fair, and that's not something that I, as a religious non-minority or non-religious minority, should be paying for.
Nobody is saying that you're not a full human being.
If I can't get married, then I don't have every right that you do.
And any tax deduction on your tax return is not just something that is given to you that should be taken away because you don't believe the way everybody else believes. Let's have a free and democratic society. It's a wonderful idea. It's enshrined in our charter. And Ian, why don't you do some good? If the church does public good,
then they should have charitable exemption under the other three categories, but not for simply worshiping a deity. That's my only point. If the only thing you do is sit around a temple and meditate, I don't want to fund it. If instead you're collecting food and giving it to the community, great. I'm happy to give you a charitable exemption, but not for pure religious behavior and political behavior like you engaged in 10 years ago.
Well, thankfully, you're not the king. You can't decree the laws. They are formed by a House of Commons, and the House of Commons has been built on the Bible, where there's no wisdom. The people well, go read. Hey, go look at what is chiseled in stone.
Canada is not a Christian nation, and please don't attempt to proclaim that it is. That's offensive to everybody else who's ever built this country, Charles. Come on. It's just not.
Go read what is chiseled in stone on the Peace Tower. There are so many scriptures. Why? Because we believe in freedom. Your freedom. We believe in your equality.
There were also Masons who built it. Do you know all about all the Mason symbols in the House of Commons too?
But you don't. You don't believe that I should be free or
I do.
James
I
Lunny.
believe that you can say whatever you want. I just want to pay for it.
You're a fundamentalist, and you want to stop other people's freedom.
Unfortunately, what I got to do is I got to stop the debate. But it's a passionate debate. It's an important one. James Lunny, a conservative MP who left the caucus, he said he's being persecuted for his social conservative beliefs, sitting as an independent. That has kicked off an argument about beliefs and the role and in politics and across the country. Charles McVety, president of the Canada Christian College, good to have you back on the program. And Ian Capstick of MediaStyle, also very good to have both. Listen. Politics is a passionate, it's a topic we debate passionately, and I appreciate both of you bringing your beliefs very much to this program. Thanks so much to both of you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Evan.